Hey, True Believers, England Teen here with the golden age of Canadian comics. In particular, I'll be more talking about the superheroes because that's what really took over comic books in the golden age of either America or Canada. Now, this was commissioned by Black Lotus. Thank you very much for that. If you would like to commission a video, just go on over to Ko-Fi. Links in the description below. Got a lot of topics to choose from any of the video channels. If you're a Patreon, you could say, hey, I want a video for this channel, or I want a video for that one. As far as these are concerned, if you go to Ko-Fi, just pick out a subject, pick out a topic, and boom, we'll get the video out to you ASAP. Now, without further ado, let's get into the golden age of Canadian comics. And the golden age of Canadian comics starts where the golden age of American comics starts, with Action Comics #1, and let's face it, ladies and gentlemen, we have to share them. Joe Shuster, one of the creators of Superman, was from Toronto. As a matter of fact, Metropolis is said to be based on his memories of Toronto. The Toronto Daily Star turns into the Daily Planet. Yeah, and it was popular worldwide, so of course it's going to reach Canada. But then we had the War Exchange Conservation Act, December 2nd, 1940. As a War Measures Act, the Canadian government banned the importation of non-essential imports, including U.S. comic books. They did that so it would strengthen their own currency, and boom, a Canadian comic book industry was born. And just like in America, They followed the same suit. There's old comic book strips folded up and sold as comic books, but they weren't really original material. They had to wait for Maple Leaf Publishing to come out with Better Comics. So that's why Better Comics is considered the very first Canadian comic book. And in the very first issue of Maple Leaf Publishing's Better Comics, we got a couple of characters. The first one was by a guy named John Stables, writing under the pen name of John St. Ables. Stables, St. Ables, get it? Stanley, Stan Lee, get it? Yeah, kind of the same thing. His name was Brock Windsor. But the big announcement for Better Comics would be Canada's very first superhero, Iron Man. Dun, 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 dun. 22 years before Marvel Comics had their own Iron Man and made him famous, we had this not quite so famous amphibious guy who was a mutated human living in the South Seas, who just so happened to have superhuman strength and didn't fly. He could jump. He was indestructible. Namor! But really, that's where the similarities end. I mean, he was called upon by a couple of kids and a dude named Major to help the Allies fight the Nazis. And we know Namor did nothing like that. Alrighty, on to the next hero. So I kind of brushed past Brock Windsor when I really shouldn't have, because he does have fans. In 2014, there was a Kickstarter to kind of republish, to reprint his adventures, and it was successful. So there are people who really care about this character out there. He was a doctor. He's an outdoorsman type. He spoke multiple languages, including French, and they even made up one for the comic book based on an Indian tribe there called Blackpaw. And he's canoeing one day. He crash lands on an island in the middle of Lake of the Woods, and he's trying to get back home. And while he's there, he ends up in the company of the former leader of the Indian tribe that stayed there, a giant named Torgon. He's given a flash gun and a dagger. And while they're on their adventures, they meet a girl named Stara, who is actually a daughter of a ghost from the island. It does sound kind of kooky, and it kind of sounds a little bit exciting as well. I want to check out these adventures. Making his first appearance in Bing Bang Comics, I think it's very important to note one thing that I had to come to grips with myself. He's not a Mountie. The name's Sergeant Canuck. And his only powers are he's a fighter and he could survive in the Canadian wilderness. And isn't that a power in and of itself? Yeah, but you know what? In the 1940s, there were actually a lot of superheroes that were really police, or police that were really superheroes. A lot of times they would get deputized. In this case, he works for the British Columbia Police Force, and he has a bad guy named the Skull and another one named Count Zora, of all people. So there you go. March an April issue of Bing Bang Comics 1941. There, I'm glad I could clear that up and introduce another guy to you. So somebody we really have to talk about here is Anglo-American Comics, AA, as it says right here. They were a comic book company that, while they did have the Robin Hood comic, made from the strips beforehand, they mostly licensed Captain Marvel since they couldn't bring over the comic books, and they had Canadian artists and writers just kind of tweak the stories and draw up different characters. So a lot of their published superheroes are derivative of Shazam. Alrighty, gang, first of the AA heroes, we're going to talk about Freelance. Created by Ed Furness and Ted McCall. This dude is another one that's been given some sort of special abilities by some sort of native tribe. I'm not kidding you. Seriously, that's what's going on. So he hangs out with a dude named Big John Collins and a woman named Natasha. The Big John Collins, peg leg pirate. Not kidding. Natasha, guess what? You could even tell it by the name. Secret agent. Yeah, Russian secret. No woman named Natasha is not a Russian secret agent. Seriously. So he was raised by this native tribe in a lost tropical valley in the Antarctic. And as he grew up, he became stronger than your average man, tougher than your average man, of course. And then he moved to the civilized world where he ended up fighting, guess what? Nazis, because that's what they did back then. So there you go, gang. Freelance. Gotta catch it. I don't know what that means. I don't know what I was going for when I said that. I used Pokemon, and we're talking about a Canadian superhero anyway. But there you go, guys. Freelance. Next up, we're going to talk about a character named Terry Kane, who made his first appearance in Grand Slam 3 Aces Comics, number 46. And you're like, Terry Kane? Holy Toledo, that must be like their Superman. Well, yeah, his powers are all Canadian. He's a good fighter. He can fly. By that I mean he's a pilot, and he can sail. So he goes all around the world getting into all sorts of trouble. There is a monastery. There is a remote island, and that said monastery is being attacked by prehistoric cavemen. What else do you want in the world? There you go, gang. Terry Kane. Adventurer. Next up, Red Rover. Red Rover, send the next guy. Dude, this is the same as the other guy. He's an adventurer. He's strong, he's tough, he's a skilled fighter. This time around, he's an excellent swimmer, which makes me wonder if he ever runs into Iron Man, considering he hangs around in the South Seas with his friends Knuckles and Skipper, fighting guys called Greasy and Kid McNool. There you go, gang. Red Rover. Making his first appearance in Grand Slam Comics number 10, and written and created by Terry McCool. Alrighty, gang, at least this time around, they are ripping off the Lone Ranger. This time we have the Purple Rider, who fights enemies such as the Black Gun Gang, the Jackal, who is the leader of the Black Gun Gang. Okay, but his superpowers? Skilled gunfighter, equally good with both hands. He can fight. He can ride. He's respected by lawmen and the public. And he's even got a rallying cry, and it is, "Scramble, pard, tally, ho, ho, ho!" I kid you not. That's what it says right here. And, yep. Yeah. Okay, man, I really have to check this out. First appearance in Grand Slam Aces. This thing, I'm beginning to think that Canada really had this one comic strip in the 1940s, and it just had everybody in it. But you know what? If you're going to steal from the best, so might as well have a Lone Ranger derivative, right? That's what I think. Anywho, let's move on. Next up, we have Dr. Destine, and I have to say I was hoping for more on this one. He's a criminologist, and guess what his powers are? He can fight. He's skilled. He's a detective. That's it. He's assisted by Rugged, his manservant, and his girlfriend Beverly. And they travel around the world and they solve mysteries, just like Scooby-Doo. Now we're talking, ladies and gentlemen, Commander Steel. First appearance, Grand Slam Comics number 9. He's basically the lead character from here on in for Grand Slam Comics. And he's a Canadian original, derivative of absolutely no one. Superhuman strength, speed, durability, even has a healing factor. And he got this because he was at the Battle of El Alamein when he was wounded by a German shell, and he was taken in by a scientist who gave him a super soldier. Excuse me. He was given an elixir of power, and for the remainder of the war, he fought as Commander Steele against the Nazis for Interpol. Not the United States government, Interpol. See where the differences lie? The third publisher to the Canadian comic book stands would have to be Hillborough, and I'm not going to go through every little one of their characters. Not a lot of them made any kind of impact, but one most definitely did. Nelvana of the Northern Lights, created in 1941. The first appearance, Triumph, Adventure Comics #1, created by Adrian Dingle and Franz Johnson. She was around before Wonder Woman. There you go. And the first female superhero to debut in Canada. Dingle was inspired by the Inuit legend Koliak, his mortal wife, and their children. Now, they decided to make Nelvana, who in the story of the legend anyway, is described as hideous and witch-like. She's made to be young and beautiful so they could create a real superheroine for Canada. The Inuit god Koliak, king of the Northern Lights, fell in love and married a mortal woman. And that marriage produced a daughter, the powerful half-god Nelvana. The gods were enraged that Koliak would marry a mortal and cursed him to be visible only as the Northern Lights. Nelvana draws her strength from her father as the Aurora Borealis. That is a cool freaking story, man. Seriously, that sounds like a great premise for a comic book. See, damn. Canada. What you doing here? You finally landed one. You made me want to read a comic book here. And I gotta say, at least this time, like you could say, wow, she looks and kind of seems like Thor. Yeah, but he would come much, much, much later than her. So if anything, Thor's a derivative of Nelvana. So good job on Canada. This may be the best one. And on that high note, I'm going to bring an end to this particular video. However, there has to be another Golden Age Canada Heroes coming. Hopefully this one gets the views, but I will definitely finish this because otherwise it would be like a 25-minute video. There's a lot more to come. Anyway, what did you think? Are there any of these that kind of piqued your interest? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to click like and share. If you haven't done it already, hit the subscription, ring that notification bell, and if you don't mind helping out the channel, and definitely this channel needs a lot of help, share, share, share. Go on over to Patreon or to Ko-Fi. Drop $1 in the till. Helps keep the lights on. Helps keep making videos for you. You could even commission a video just like Black Lotus did, and we'll get that to you as soon as possible. Thank everybody who's already done that, and to everyone, all of the true believers, thank you very, very much for watching.